Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today we have a guest. It is Jordan Black, who is a BCBA and the co-host of the podcast Moms on Their Best Behavior, and also the co-owner of Best Behavior Solutions. I believe she is half of Jordan and Chelsea, but only Jordan is
Yes.
here today. So, hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
So, to start, if you could tell us, our audience, a little bit about you and how you got into, doing what you do.
Sure. So my story kind of goes back pretty far. I had a friend in kindergarten actually that had Down syndrome that I just became really good friends with. And we just grew up being in the same class and being really exposed to the disability field, going to Special Olympics, all those sorts of things. And by the time I got to high school, I decided, I really want to be a special education teacher. Working with individuals with disabilities is something I truly love. And then fast forward to grad school, I went to Vanderbilt University to get my master's in special education. And while I was there at my orientation, they're like, hey, there's this other thing called ABA that you can do at the same time. And I had honestly never heard of that before, but I was like, you know what? If it makes me a better special education teacher, I'll try it. So I did and did all my coursework and everything there. But then my life goal up to that point had to be a special education teacher. So I decided to do that first, and taught special ed and general ed for a couple years. And then once I passed my exam, went over to the BCBA side, and now I've been doing that for over 7 years. And I currently do in-home therapy, and I really just love it.
Think almost everyone that we ask this question to tells a story about how they fell into ABA. Like
Yeah,
for
yeah,
everyone, it's been an
right.
interesting journey. I don't think anybody at 12 years old is like, I want to be an ABA therapist. But we all
Sure.
kind of like find this solution as we, venture into the world, which is, kind of interesting. And it seems like part of what you do is really expanding the reach of who ABA can help, making ABA strategies really relatable to everybody and applicable to everybody. It's not just special education, even though you are in that field. Why was that so important to you?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So, my co-host and myself, Dr. Chelsea Anderson, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, we became friends. She was running a disability ministry at our church, and I volunteered to join. And we were actually both pregnant with our first children at the same time. And so just instantly had a lot in common. But I think we were finding, as a few years go by, that we're not only using these strategies in our professional realms, we're also using these strategies every day at home with our own young children. And really that's where kind of the podcast came about, is we really want to close this research to practice gap, that we have all these strategies and they're being implemented so well in the autism community, but they can also really be effective with all children, all behaviors everywhere. So really just trying to share that information in a way that's helpful for parents and educators and professionals, and just really helping out all of us.
It's so true. Similar to you, I had a background in special education and I was a teacher for a couple years. I actually was a parent before I was a BCBA. So I had my three kids and then I became a BCBA.
Nice.
And the part for me that was so interesting was like, this is just parenting. And I
Mm-hmm.
wish I knew these things when my kids were young. And so I was so excited by it when we thought about doing How to ABA. I was torn between like, I just want more parents to know this information. And do
Mm-hmm.
we, do this as a way to educate parents and not just, be in the autism space? Because I think there's so much value in a lot of these skills just being good teaching, good parenting, good, good reinforcement, good business management. It could be applied to so many things. Um, and what are you finding is like the most relevant place or the biggest problem that parents are finding this in what you're seeing where you're like, wow, parents need this support?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is parents just understanding why a behavior is occurring and what to do with that behavior. We really focus a lot on the functions of behavior, because if you haven't, maybe been through any of the coursework that we go through or exposed at all, you probably haven't heard of that before. So focusing on that. I think just also teaching that all behavior is communication. I think we've really accepted that, again, like in our field, but I think outside of that, that's still something that we can continue to focus on and teach, of just, when the kid's engaging in a tantrum, they're not just being bad, like they are trying to communicate something to us. And so then with that, really focusing as well on replacement behaviors. So, instead of doing this, what could we model and teach them instead? So the next time they know, what's maybe more socially appropriate, but still is going to meet their needs in that moment, still going to help them communicate. So I think that's a big thing for parents. I think a lot of parenting is like more potential consequence punishment based, which I'm not saying there's no place for that ever, but I think it often misses teaching them what they could do instead. That's really helpful for everyone because the more they can communicate, the more we can meet their needs and all of the things. So I think that's a really big thing for parents is just understanding those functions, understanding replacement behaviors. And then I think finally coupled with that is just positive reinforcement. We're huge components of positive reinforcement. And I think just explaining to parents the difference between bribing and reinforcement. I think, again, when you bring up those words, it kind of gets a bad rap. But really understanding the difference and how when we use positive reinforcement or reinforcement in general in the correct context, in the correct ways, we can really have really great outcomes.
I was just in a parent meeting. We were in a parent meeting for a school, and the parent actually said something about, well, I bribed him to get things done. And I just cringed because I was thought, we've gone over this, like we've done so much parent coaching, and you're still
Yep.
using that word. Um, but in reality, I mean, parent coaching is massive. And, if
Mhm.
I could rewind the clock in my private business, I used to own clinics, and we had, parents drop off their kids, and, we would work with kids all day, and then they'd go home with parents. And we did a little bit of parent training, but not enough to make it necessarily worthwhile to parents. And those parents who, really, there were certain parents who, weren't working full time, and they were, able to attend some observations and really ask questions and that kind of thing. And we also did, non-contingent phone calls with parents and what have you, but it wasn't the same. We didn't have everybody do a mandatory parent training session. We didn't have
Mhm.
people going through like coursework and everything is communication, or every single behavior is this, and this is how you treat it, and here's the benefits of positive reinforcement and all of that kind of thing. And I just think, oh, how useful it is just to be able to say, parents, like here's some science, and not just parents with kids with autism, but just parents in
Mhm.
general. Look, here's what you can do with this. Imagine. So it's really awesome that
Absolutely.
you've got your podcast now, and that you're, starting these trainings for parents specifically, because I think that's a huge gap that's still missing in our field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree.
So how do you get the parent buy-in, I would say? And that's a hard part, because parents are like, well, I've signed up for this ABA thing, I've signed up so that you can do this with my child. Why do I need to go through these sessions?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think so. I currently do in home. I do think that that's part of the reason I love in home because we are right there in their environment with them. I think, they get to see what we're doing every single day. I love that if we're trying to problem solve through something, we can just turn to the family and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or what is your preference on this type of situation? And make it a lot more collaborative that way. I think as far as our training and like our business, I think parents are just also finding, maybe outside the autism community, that some of the other methods just aren't really working and aren't really being effective. And so, I think also with the podcast, we just found we were kind of becoming the sounding board for a lot of our friends. Like our friends would come to us like, hey, my toddler will not sit during meals. Like, what do I do? And so when we're giving them these strategies and they're becoming effective for them, like that's really powerful, right? Or I don't even know where to begin with toilet training. Like, where do I even start? So I think again, as we hit those natural consequences and things are improving, that's reinforcing for everyone. But yeah, I think just having that collaboration in itself really becomes very helpful.
I think parents want to find the solution. Like I remember being that
Mhm.
parent and not knowing where to go. And when my one of my kids was a baby, being given this book about like, sleeping strategies or something. And I remember feeling like such a failure because like it didn't work. And I was like, I want to burn this book. And I'm the worst parent because I can't get anything right. And, as my kids were getting older, just looking everywhere for like, what do I do? And I don't think people realize how many solutions are within behavior science. So many of the,
Mhm.
typical, books or experts in the field or people that are talking about a lot of parenting things comes down to good behavior science. And I remember taking a parenting course when my kids were young, and one of the strategies that I started implementing very early was setting yourself up for success. That was what she called it. And it was about like making sure that you make the lunches the night before, and making sure that you get out of the house early enough, or you start your routines early enough, or your kids aren't starving, or those kind of things. And, now I'm like, great, antecedent control. Like,
Yep.
and it's all behavior science. And to me as a parent, I was like, where do I go for the solutions? And
Mhm.
having a place that can explain it in a way that makes sense for parents, like don't call it antecedent control. Call it, setting yourself up for success, and make it relatable and, possible for parents to digest this information, because it's like so valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I always tell everyone I think becoming a parent will make you a better clinician. It's very humbling. And I think, both Chelsea and I reflect on that a lot of like, it's so different implementing things with your own children than maybe with someone else. But again, it can be so powerful. And when you have those tools and you understand how to implement them, you really can help your own children make great behavior change as well. But I completely agree. It's funny. I'll see stuff online where it's not necessarily even coming from a BCBA, but I'm like, oh, that's behavior science. Like you're doing exactly what I would say too. You're just maybe using different verbiage, but it's all coming from the same goals. So
And of course, my kids were the anti-ABA principles did not work for them. So I was like, determined to figure them out. So now I know more behavior principles beyond the, just general ones.
My
So.
daughter still makes checklists and all of that type of thing. And she'll set, okay, daddy daughter day, here's what we're doing. And she writes it down, or she'll write down different tasks like, okay, to do today. And she continues to write that down. But the whole token board thing never worked for her either,
Mhm.
because she would just go to her aunt and get everything she wanted. And it's like, ah, but
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, my son's actually started making himself his own token boards.
you, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit also about schools, because I know you
Yep.
guys want to do a lot of like support and training and things of going into schools. And what do you see schools really struggling with?
Yeah, so I think part of it, so we really want to focus on like daycares, private schools, educational settings that, again, aren't traditionally being given any type of behavioral training and sometimes won't even accept individuals with disabilities because they don't feel like they can support them in that setting. And I don't say that to slight them, they're working extremely hard, but if we can equip them with the strategies that might be able to let individuals with disabilities be able to be in their settings, that's huge for us. And that's really a big goal for us. But honestly, too, in all of these settings, like behavior is happening all the time. With all children. So, as far as schools, again, I do think it goes back to reinforcement. I think understanding like whole group reinforcement versus when do we individualize something for a child that maybe needs more behavioral support, and how do we do that in a way that helps support that student but also doesn't drain all the resources of the teacher. And that's going to look different in every single setting, but I think that's a really big one of just, how can we help the overall classroom environment but also maybe support those kiddos that just need a little bit more in their day-to-day.
Mhm. What do you think they're missing? Because a lot of them, like you said, mean well. Like, is it they don't have the education or the training or the skills or the staff, or like what is it that you find is needs to the gap that needs to be filled?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think some of it is the education piece and also the implementation piece. Like I often see that maybe they understand the basics, but how they're able to implement it or kind of how they're doing it in a way isn't maybe as effective as it could be. So I think, yeah, just really helping them understand how to implement it, we can talk about reinforcement all day, but is it happening at the right times? Is it the right ratio? All those sorts of things. And really thinking through that is where I often see gaps with them. And also just, I think also like the functions of behavior, things like that of, again, really understanding like, okay, well, if I have them leave class, but they're actually trying to leave class, or I'm giving attention to a behavior that's really what they're seeking. So understanding that too, I think can be extremely helpful.
I think you can make a whole business about explaining to people about reinforcement. Like
Yes.
there's so much to it and so many misconceptions about it. I think even amongst like us professionals, I think there's like different levels of expertise around like, well, I tried the token board and it didn't work, so I guess I'm done.
Mhm.
And understanding how reinforcement works, and you know, you can apply it to businesses, you can apply it to homes, to parenting, to schools. Like this principle of how people are motivated to do things is like huge. So I love that it's becoming more accessible to more people outside of the autism community.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Because I mean, it's happening all the time to us, anyways, whether we realize it or not. We're being reinforced by things. So if we can understand it and then apply it in a way that's helpful and teaching appropriate skills and helping children really thrive in those environments, like, let's do it, you know?
Hmm. And there's so many times where, I'm thinking right now, as you were talking before about the daycares, I'm in a daycare. I'm working with a couple of young kids right
Um,
now, so I'm in a daycare quite often. And it's such a chaotic environment. You've got, three kids who are screaming. You've got another one who needs a diaper change. You've got another one who's got toys in his mouth. And you've got like it's very chaotic. The daycare I'm at does an amazing job. But you think about how many moving pieces there are. It's not just working one-to-one with somebody, and it's not just enough to be like, oh, we'll just put a token board in place. It's not that at all. And you can walk into certain classrooms and go, wow, this is a really amazing classroom. And if you weren't a behavior analyst, you'd go, whoa, wow, this is great. And then you walk into another one and go, holy cow, why is it so chaotic? It's out of control here. And if you're not a behavior analyst, like I said, you wouldn't be able to pinpoint it. But as a behavior analyst, you're like, oh, this person knows exactly what's going on at any given moment, knows exactly what kid is where, has eyes everywhere, but from a behavioral standpoint, knows exactly what's motivating each kid and how that works, and using those antecedent strategies to have that class control. And it's pretty cool to see ABA in practice.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So a large part of our audience is, either newly minted BCBAs or even for the more experienced BCBA. Something we like to ask our guests is like, what is your best tip for somebody who's just getting into the field? It could be something related to, educating parents or who people who are going into schools. What would be your best tip?
Yeah, so I would say it's okay to not have all the answers. I think as the BCBA, we're supposed to be the expert. We're supposed to be the person that knows exactly what to do, when the child's throwing stuff at us or the parent's upset or whatever, all these really difficult situations. But it is okay to say, you know what, I need to think about this some more, take some time, and I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to consult people that maybe have more experience than me or the literature or other resources and then come back. And just not being too quick to jump to an answer if you don't really feel like that's the best like clinical answer in that moment. But again, I think that's really hard. And I will say, as a brand new BCB, I did use y'all's resources a lot, and I was so glad that
Thank
I
you.
found it. And I've been using it for a while now, but even seeking out things like what y'all provide can be really helpful in lots of different situations. But yeah, just not being too quick to give an answer, but really just making sure that you're being very thoughtful in what you're providing.
That is so important. And knowing that it's okay to not have the answers, but then also knowing where to go for the answers. And I think that's where, we come in, that's where you have a mentor, that's where you have to know where to go, because none of us come into the field with the experience, and so much depends on experience. But part of that
Mhm.
experience is also like we still don't know things and we're constantly learning and figuring things out. And that's why the science is so exciting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Where can people find out more about you?
Yes, so we're on Instagram at moms on their best behavior and then also at bestbehaviorsolutions.org.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. It was nice to meet you, and hopefully we can chat with, both of you at some point.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.